Hey everyone, I'm back. Okay. I said in my last video that I would talk about when I got hit by a car when I was a child. And so it was the summer of, okay, after second grade, there's summer and then there's third grade. So it was like in that summer after second grade. And I was out and it was raining that day and not like hard, just sprinkling. And I was playing with some friends and I don't remember any of their names except for one of them, and his name was Larry. And I remember him mainly because his parents were divorced, and back then divorce wasn't as common as it is today. And so he'd only come every other weekend to stay with his mother or his grandmother's house where his mother lived. Um, I'm not entirely sure why he was with his father most of the time, but he was. And so we were out and we were playing. I believe we were just playing ball or something. And I was about a block from my parents' house. And I don't remember the circumstances behind it. It was so long ago, but I do know that I ran out into the road and a car was coming down the street. But they also had a stop sign, so they also didn't stop. So it was kind of like they didn't stop, and also I ran out without looking. And I remember Larry saying to me, look out, there's a car. And then I turned and I see the car, and everything got weird. Like time just went very, very slowly, is the only way to describe it. Because at this point, it really should only take maybe from the distance from where the car is to where I am, maybe 2 seconds. And so I look and I see this green vehicle, and I kind of see a person in it. And then my vision, my vision completely goes out. And I see, I'm only at this point 7 or 8 years old. And I remember seeing my entire life flashing in front of me, as short of a life as it was at that time. I remember seeing, my friend down the street, this girl I used to play with, like my parents, birthday parties, just really quick, rapid images playing. Then it stopped, and there was silence. And the car still hadn't hit me yet after all this went through my head. And so then it did. I remember feeling this bump on my hip, which would have been my right hip, because I was facing that direction. And it hit me, and I remember hitting the ground, and then that's it. Like, there was still silence. Like, there was no pain. There was no fear in that moment. There was just quiet. And then after the car stopped, and after I was on the ground, the sound of life came rushing right back. And I stood up, and I was wearing shorts at the time and a short sleeve shirt because it was summertime. And my knees were scraped, and my elbows were scraped because I hit the ground kind of, dragged a little bit. And apparently the car had made a screeching sound, of course, from slamming on the brakes. And the next thing I remember is the passenger side door of the car opening, and this woman standing up with red hair and screaming in German. I mean, I didn't know it was German at the time, but it was German. And so she's screaming at me in German, and then the driver gets out, this blonde woman, and she's freaking out. And then all the people in the houses around there come out to the street, and they're all standing around me in this circle. So I'm in the center, and they're all around me. The German woman screaming, the other girls crying and pacing back and forth, and all these people are shouting at me. And I can't remember any one of them except for this one woman. She came out in her yellow bathrobe. She had blue curlers in her hair, and she kept saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And people are freaking out. So Larry, my friend, he comes and he gets me, and I say I have to go home. I have to tell my parents. And I don't remember if anyone said anything to me, but I remember we walked away and went back to my parents' house, which is only a block. And I remember even at that point knowing, if you watch my last video, how my parents are about things. So I was terrified. I didn't want to tell them what just happened to me. I knew I'd be in trouble or something bad was going to happen. And so we went into the house, and I said something happened. And my mom, we were in the dining room. I remember that's where it took place. My father's standing in the doorway by the kitchen, which enters the dining room, and my mother standing near like the bathroom door, which at that house at the time there was a bathroom off the dining room. And my mom's like, well, what happened? What happened? And I said, Larry, you tell him, because I was too scared. I just couldn't tell them. And Larry said, he's been hit. And my mom said, by what? And he said, a car. And my mother instantly breaks into hysterics. She starts freaking out. Now I'm scared because my mother's freaking out. I'm already scared anyway after what just happened. So I go into the bathroom, and my mother's like, kind of like not jumping, but just like her knees, like she's bending her knees and going up and down. She's crying hysterically, putting on her makeup, which to my mother, it's always important to put on makeup first before going in public. And my father, like I remember being by her leg because I'm tiny. I mean, I'm little, so I'm standing by her leg. And my father is on his knees and he's shaking his fist in my face and screaming, safety first, safety first, safety first. And my mom's like crying, and I'm by her leg. I may have been holding on to her leg because I was terrified. I don't know if Larry left by this point. He may have ran out. I don't know if he stayed there. So then we go up to the corner, and the woman had left, but then she circled back around. I guess she got scared, or she shouldn't have left the scene of an accident. But then again, I left. I don't know how long that took. I don't remember, time frames with that. So because of my parents' reaction at the time, my mom's like, well, we should take you to the hospital. And I begged and I pleaded. I said, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And it's because in my mind, I thought the doctors would also yell and scream at me, just like my parents, and act the same way, and I'd be in so much trouble. And so I was so scared. And so my parents didn't take me to the hospital. I laid on the couch the rest of the day, and Disney Channel was on. It was a new station at that time. And I remember, I don't know what show was on, but there was some puppets on stage just dancing around, and I was watching that and covered with a blanket and just feeling scared. And I don't remember anything after that, really. It's the last thing I remember until later that summer, when my parents made me go and speak to the woman who hit me to either make me say I was sorry or tell her I was okay or something. And I remember being so petrified of that too. Now, what's interesting what happened after that is I was scared to cross the street. Like really, really frightened to cross the street. So that's my first thing with anxiety, where I became terrified of something. And I did not, this was the summer of second grade going into third. I had this problem with crossing the street all the way to seventh grade. And by problem, I mean, if I could see a car, I wouldn't cross. If I could see the headlights way down the street, blocks and blocks away, I wouldn't cross. So I remember around seventh grade, like my friends crossing the street and say, come on, come on, come on. I'm like, I will. I'll cross soon. And everything. I had to wait till there was no vehicle that I could see. And then I would cross. And eventually, like, they would continue on without me, and so I'd cross and then run up to catch up with them. But looking back at the situation, and even as an adult saying to my parents, well, saying to my mother, at least, I said, well, why didn't you take me to the hospital? My mom said, well, you didn't want to go. And it's true, I didn't want to go. But I was like 7 years old. I mean, you really let me make that decision? I could have had internal bleeding. I could have had all sorts of things, wrong. And I don't know if their reaction was normal. My reaction, if it was my child, I think that I wouldn't yell at the child. I'd be so thankful that they weren't injured, and I would check them and make sure that, they looked okay. I'd hug them. I would take them to the hospital, and I would say what happened. I don't think I would intentionally try to frighten them. I don't think my parents intentionally tried to frighten me, but that's what happened. I remember being terrified. And so I think that that could be the origins of where a lot of anxiety started. Not that I didn't have any before then, but this was a real focal point that really affected my life, and for quite a few years. I mean, think summer of second grade to seventh grade. It's quite a long time. I don't know exactly when or how I got over that fear of crossing the street, but I did. Not too long ago, actually, I closed my car door when I parked, and I turned around, and I wasn't in the road, but I closed it, and I turned around, and this car whizzed by, and it kind of brought that feeling back for a second of, oh, I could have been hit by a car. I don't know, like, it just kind of brought it back. So I think that's what brought it into my mind, recently, to even discuss it with you. But another thing that it never, with all the fear that I was carrying, because I expressed I was scared to cross the street, it was just bad because maybe a year later, I was at home, and I went to the corner store, and I came back. But while I was at the corner store, there was a car accident on the corner. Like 2 cars had hit. And my mother was hysterical, and I come back in the house. She's like, oh, everyone was looking underneath the car, and I thought they were looking at a body. I thought it was your body all mangled and torn apart underneath the car. And I just remember this anxiety of just, I pictured it as if it was true, and I just remember getting so scared. Again, I don't think that's something that may be a fear that I would have. It's not something I would say to my small child. I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's so graphic. It's not like, oh, I was worried that you got hit, or, I mean, even that's a little bit much, but just the whole mangled and underneath the car, and I remember crying and freaking out, and just all sorts of stuff like that. So I'm not sure if anyone's had a similar experience with not necessarily getting hit by a car, but maybe car accident or anything like that. I mean, it can really shake you up, and I just wish that the people in my life at that time, whether they did the best that they could or not, I wish they did better with that situation. I mean, it deeply affected me for many, many years, and I just think that the way it was dealt with could have been better. And so that's it for today. I'll try to make a video tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure why he was with his father most of the time, but he was. And so we were out and we were playing, I believe we were just playing ball or something. And it was about a block from my parents' house. And I don't remember the circumstances behind it. It was so long ago, but I do know that I ran out into the road. Hey everyone, I'm back. Okay. I said in my last video that I would talk about when I got hit by a car when I was a child. And so it was the summer of, okay, after second grade, there's summer and then there's third grade. So it was like in that summer after second grade. And I was out, and it was raining that day, and not like hard, just, and a car was coming down the street. But they also had a stop sign, so they also didn't stop. So it was kind of like they didn't stop, and also I ran out without looking. And I remember Larry saying to me, look out, there's a car. And then I turned and I see the car, and everything got weird. Like time just went very, very slowly, is the only way to describe sprinkling. And I was playing with some friends, and I don't remember any of their names except for one of them, and his name was Larry. And I remember him mainly because his parents were divorced, and back then divorce wasn't as common as it is today. And so he'd only come every other weekend to stay with his mother or his grandmother's house where his mother lived. Because at this point, it really should only take maybe from the distance from where the car is to where I am, maybe 2 seconds. And so I look and I see this green vehicle, and I kind of see a person in it. And then my vision, my vision completely goes out, and I see, I'm only at this point